All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over the PowerPoint presentations for Murox ASP.NET 4.6 with C# 2015 6th edition for the AWD1111 ASP.NET and Web Databases class. I'm up to Chapter 15, as you can see, and Chapter 15, which starts on page 527, is entitled How to Use the Details View and Form View Controls. Both of these controls are designed to work with the Grid View control to display details of the item you select in that control. They can be used on their own and in combination with other types of list controls, drop-downs, list boxes, etc. So, our objectives here. Describe the three modes of the Details View control. Describe the basic functions of the Details View control and the Form View control. Explain what the before action and after action events of the Details View control are typically used for. Describe the templates you can use to control the appearance of the Details View control. Describe how the Details View and Form View controls differ. Describe the templates that are generated for a Form View control. And finally, explain what a master detail page is and how to develop one using the Details View or Form View control. Let me just start by saying that this is right here. This is a master detail page. So the master would be here. You're choosing a product, Austin Power, and the detail would be here. That's all the details about the Austin Powers product. If you change that, you chose fog machine, that would have all the information about a fog machine, etc. So this is a Details View control. It displays data for, the bottom part is a Details View control. It displays data for a single row of a data source. It's typically used in combination with a drop-down list or with a Grid View control that is used to select the item to be displayed. It includes a fields element that contains a bound field element for each field retrieved from the data source. You can edit the fields collection by choosing Edit Fields from the Smart Tag menu or of a Details View control. So the Details View control can be displayed in one of three different modes. It can be displayed in read-only mode, as you see right here. In read-only mode, the data is displayed, but it cannot be edited. If you change it from read-only mode to edit mode, the user can modify the data for the current row. And if you put it in insert mode, the user can enter data that will be inserted into the data source as a new row. As far as Details View control properties, we've got the data source ID. Do we have to talk about that anymore? That's the ID of the data source. Data key names, which is a list of the field names that form the primary key for the data source. Auto-generate rows, which is a Boolean, and if it's set to true, a row is automatically generated for each field in the data source. If it's false, you must define the rows in the fields element. Default mode, which sets the initial mode. It's one of those three things that we just looked at. Edit, insert, or read only. And allow paging. If it's set to true, it allows paging. All right, these are the properties you're most likely to use with this control. This table right here lists the child elements that you can use between the start and end tags of a Details View element. Most of these are used to provide styles and templates that control formatting and content. You've got fields. The fields displayed in the Details View control. Row style. That's what's used if you're in read-only mode. Alternating row style if you're doing zebra striping. Edit row style. So that's the style when the data rows are in edit mode. Insert row style, the style when you're in insert mode. Command row style for command rows. Empty data row style when the data source is empty. Empty data template, which is the template when the data source is empty. Header style and header template, the style for the header row and the template for the header row. Footer style and footer template, the style for the footer row and the template for the footer row. Pager settings, pager style, and pager template, the settings used to control the page row, the style for the pager row, and the template for the pager row. As far as the child elements, we've got bound field, a field bound to a data source column, button field, a field that displays a button, checkbox field, a field that displays a checkbox, command field, which contains command buttons, hyperlink field that displays a hyperlink, image field to display an image, and template field for a column with custom content. When you come in and want to allow paging, this is kind of like the grid view control. It supports paging, and you can add a row of paging controls when you set the allow paging attribute to true. And of course, you can move from one item to the other using the paging controls. So you'll notice in this case, we've got allow paging true, and we've got next, previous, first, last. And I guess it doesn't show you what that gives you, but it did back in Chapter 14. Okay? All right, we mentioned before about a master detail page. And as you can see on here, a few things about a master detail page. First, a control that lets the user choose an item to display, so that's the master, such as a drop-down list, or it could be a grid view. Then you've got a data source that retrieves all the items to be displayed in the list. Then you've got the details view control that displays the detail for the master item that you selected. You need a data source that retrieves the data for the item selected by the user. That data source, the details view is bound to this data source. And then the data source can use a parameter that's bound to the selected value control that contains a list of data items. So, here's an example of how it's used. Looks here like we've got the product ID. Well, I guess we're going into the details view. But again, the idea is what we looked at the beginning of the chapter. There's the master, there's the detail. Now this could be, if you wanted to let the user see everything that was available, again, you might use a grid view there instead of using a drop down. You can also use a list box, so there's a lot of ways that this can be done. All right. Besides displaying data for a specific item from a data source, you can use the details view to edit, insert, and delete items. And you'll notice here that in this case, what we have is we've got an edit button, a delete button, and a new button. The details view actually supports 6 different buttons. The 3 that are shown here, edit, delete, and new, but it also supports update, which is displayed only in edit mode. It updates the data source, then returns to read only. Insert, which is displayed in insert mode, inserts the data, then returns to read only. And cancel, which is displayed if you're in insert or edit mode, and it cancels the current operation. You can use the auto-generate delete button, auto-generate edit button, and auto-generate insert button properties to automatically generate these buttons. You can also customize the button appearance by using command fields instead of these automatically generated buttons. As far as the adding of command buttons, here's the details view that automatically generates the buttons, so you can see the ones that are true here. And you can add command buttons to a details view to let the user do those major operations that we talked about. So notice we can let them delete records, insert new records, update or edit existing records, and we can allow a cancel button to be shown. These command buttons are similar to the command buttons for a grid view control, but the details view control doesn't provide a select button, okay? And it does provide new and insert buttons, which you don't get with a grid view. To display this add field dialog box, you choose add new field from the smart tag. Remember, the smart tag is always when you bring the control up. I don't even have this up yet, so we're in Chapter 15. Yep, remember, we're not doing it that way. And it looks like the first one that we're going to go over in Chapter 15 is the product maintenance application. So let's go over that one. This is just for completeness sake. I do want you to understand how if I come in here and I'm at my default page, all right, and I go into design mode, that if I click here, that's my smart tag. All right. Many controls have an associated smart tag that allow you to do a lot of different things, like hook up to data sources. You know, sometimes you do that because you want to be able to provide styling, and there's other reasons as well. So when you set up all this stuff, here's the code that's generated. Notice we've got show delete button, show edit button, and show insert button are true. All right. There are different events as shown on pages 540 and 541 that are automatically going to be raised by the details view control. Again, you'll notice that many of these have got the deleted, deleting, inserted, inserting, updated, updating. So again, you use the active one, all right? You use the active control that's in there, the before action or whatever you want to call it, all right, for validation. And you use the after action so you can check that database operations have completed successfully. Ideally, most of these make sense. Item command is when the button is clicked. Item created when it's created. Data bound when data binding completes for an item. Deleted when after the item has been deleted. Deleting when it's about to be deleted. Inserted when it's been inserted. Inserting when it's about to be inserted. Updated when it's been updated. Updating when it's about to be updated. Index changed when you change the index of the item, of the displayed item. And index changing when it's about to change. So like the grid view, the details view raises a bunch of events. All right. If the details view is used on a master detail page, you should call the data bind method of the master control after a successful insert, update, or delete. Also, and here's the associated code, very similar to the code that we saw for the grid view. All right, here's how we can create template fields. So, like the grid view, you can use template fields to control the appearance of fields in the detail view. You can do that to do things like add, for example, validation controls, or to use controls other than text boxes. All right, like you notice right here. This is kind of neat right here in this example, because ideally when you set something up for a person to edit, you want to make it as hard for them to screw up as possible. So here we've got our different categories in a drop-down list. So they have to choose one of those values, so it would be virtually impossible for them to choose something that was incorrect. All right, whereas you could leave one of these blank, you can't leave that blank, or you could give an image file that doesn't exist or a negative unit price. or a negative or non-numeric on-hand type of value. But again, you would typically put in validation controls to make sure that that doesn't happen. Now, if you want more on that, this basically is some of it at least is kind of a reprint from pages 518 and 519 when we talked about how to work with template fields with a grid view control. These elements, again, item template for working with an individual field, alternating item template for alternating fields, edit item template when you're in edit mode, insert item template when you're in insert mode, and header template for the header text for the field. You create these template fields using the same techniques you use to create template fields for a grid view control. In other words, you convert bound fields to template fields, you switch to template editing mode, and you select the template that you want to edit. Okay, so let's take a look at this product maintenance application. This is a master detail page that you could use to maintain the products table. It uses a grid view control to list the product records on the left side. This control uses paging to allow the user to scroll through the entire products table. When the user selects a product that she or he wants to display, the details for the product are then shown in the details view on the right-hand side. Then the user can edit or use the edit or delete button to edit or delete the selected product. They can also use the new button to insert a new product. All right, so if we take a look at this in action, this is it right here, and hopefully it'll work okay. Check my time. So again, notice P01 because that's the current one. And to be fair, it does not appear to be doing any. Select. We go to jar jar. So we could edit this if we wanted to. Notice we can't edit the product ID. And if we change the category, it will be a valid one. And if we change on hand, if we leave that blank and update, notice on hand is the required field. Okay. I don't remember what the number was for that. I wish I did, but we'll put 19 in there for right now. We'll just cancel. How's that? And I'm glad I did that because the on hand shouldn't have been a number that was a currency. That one is. Okay. All right, but you see I can iterate my way through here. Okay. Now what's shown next in here on pages 546, 547, 548, 549, all right, on those pages are the associated code that goes along with this. And it's the next several slides that you see here. All right. The first part of the code puts in the grid view that displays the product and the data source that's hooked up to the grid view. The selected index attribute is used to set to 0. That way the information for the first product comes up automatically. And that is in here right there. The details view is then shown in the next two parts. All right. Here, the CSS class property assigns 3 different bootstrap styles, all right, that control the overall appearance of the code. In addition, the row style and the command style elements are included to control the colors used by the control. To make it easier for the user to work with the data and details view, all of the bound fields have been converted to template fields. One thing I have not done nearly a good enough job of mentioning is, again, when we have this running, stop the run and start it again, is the fact that we should be able to do here you'll notice as we do this, it is responsive. So if I do come through here and I change this to black light, you can see that it changes. And I can come in and I can edit, etc. Okay? But it is totally responsive. Now, you may not like the way that looks, but if you're a salesperson and you're out on the road and you're doing things from your phone, it works. All right? That's the bottom line. Finally, in parts 3 and 4, so at the end here, what is shown is the ASPX code for the data source that the details view is bound to. That includes the delete and the update statements in here. All right. Next, what's shown is the code behind file. Even though this application provides for complete maintenance of the products table, we have only 5 event handlers. This first one we've talked about before. Remember that if we want to use Bootstrap classes, we have to provide for a table header and a table footer, and that's what that's doing in the pre-render. All right. The other event handlers that you see in here are for responding to events raised by the details view control. These first 3, these are all handling potential database exceptions and concurrency things, both for updates, for inserts, and for deletes. All right, this last method that's in here is kind of an interesting one. It handles a problem that can occur when you apply a format to a control that's bound to a data source. In this case, the currency format is applied to the unit price. As this application uses optimistic concurrency, the original values of each field are passed to the delete statement as parameters to make sure another user hasn't changed the product row since it was retrieved. The details view sets the value as the unit price parameter to its formatted value. If you allowed this value to be passed on to the delete statement, you could have an exception thrown, and this makes sure that that doesn't happen. I'm going to stop right here before we go on and look at the form view, which is in the second part of this lecture. So we'll go through that in just a couple minutes.